Welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha, a podcast shared by David Roylance. This podcast is dedicated to guiding you to completely eliminate the discontent mind and the suffering it causes by attaining enlightenment. Learn and practice the teachings of Gotama Buddha that will guide you to fully attain a peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. To support this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha or visit buddhadailywisdom.com, where you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online learning resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Now, here's our teacher to share more.
Sawadee Kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our group learning program, and we're going to be studying chapter 15 in this book titled Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. This chapter is titled True Love, Love Without Attachment. This is where you're learning how to understand true love, or some people might describe it as unconditional love, so that you can have relationships and love in those relationships, but not be attached in them. If you're experiencing relationships where you're experiencing the ending of a relationship and you're sad or you're frustrated or angry or otherwise discontent in any of your relationships, even current relationships that you have, if you're experiencing struggles in those relationships, it's most likely because you're not practicing true love. So by you learning what true love is and starting to practice it more and more, you're going to notice that you have more fulfilling, more sustaining, and more satisfying relationships. So I'm going to share with you guys this teaching on true love, love without attachment, so that you can learn this and then you can start practicing it. And remember, whenever you're learning the teachings of the Buddha, it's very important not to actually believe anything that's being shared, but instead you learn it, you reflect on it to independently verify it, and you practice it to be able to see the truth for yourself in the teachings to acquire wisdom. So welcome to all of you guys, whether you're joining us for the first time or you've been joining us regularly. As we go in our class today, you can ask any and all questions that you like. You can put those into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any questions or follow-up questions directly. In order to help you understand this topic of true love, it's important that we first revisit a teaching that I've shared multiple times throughout this group learning program, but some of you guys may not have been here when I've actually shared this particular teaching. And other students, you may have been here and learned at different times the Four Noble Truths with me. So this will be kind of like a reminder or a refresher for you. For those of you guys that have never learned with me, this will be an opportunity for you to understand what's causing the mind to experience feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, and others, because oftentimes people associate love with painful feelings. If you think that loving somebody is painful or ultimately ends up with painful feelings, this is because you're not actually practicing and understanding what true love is. So before I explain to you what true love is, let me first help you to understand what's causing these painful feelings so that you can differentiate that from true love. Because what's causing these painful feelings is oftentimes masquerading or misunderstood as love, but in reality, what's causing these painful feelings is something we call craving, desire, attachment, wants, and expectations. So in the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha explains in the first Noble Truth that the problem in the unenlightened mind is discontentedness. These are those conditioned feelings where the mind will experience conditioned happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, euphoria. We describe these as pleasant feelings. Then there's painful feelings. These are things like sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. And then there's neither painful nor pleasant feelings like shyness or uncomfortableness. So these discontent feelings are plaguing the unenlightened mind, where the mind's going up and down at different times during your life, with periods of peacefulness here and there, periods of calm here and there, but it's only a matter of time before the unenlightened mind becomes discontent about something. So that's the first noble truth, actually, that everyone that is unenlightened will experience discontentedness. Then in the second noble truth, you understand what is the cause of these discontent feelings. Discontentedness is caused by the mind's cravings, desires, attachments, because the mind wants everything to be permanent when everything in the world around you is impermanent. So these cravings, desires, attachments, those are the cause for the discontent feelings. The mind is longing and yearning and chasing after the objects of your affection. The mind thinks that the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction. So it chases and chases and chases and chases that particular thing. And if you get what you want, you get those conditioned pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, and others. But those feelings are only temporary. They arise, they change, and they fade away. Ultimately, the mind ends up in these painful feelings of sadness, anger, and others. And if you chase after something and you're trying to hurry up and get that thing, if you don't get it, then your mind oftentimes ends up in the painful feelings, where your mind is sad or angry or frustrated or experiencing some other discontent feeling that is painful. So the mind in the unenlightened state is causing its own discontent feelings. So if you were ever in a relationship with a boyfriend or girlfriend and you guys came together, when you first got together, you might have had all these pleasant feelings where you met somebody new, maybe you're going out to dinner, maybe you're going to the movies, maybe you're having great conversations, going to the park, maybe you're having intimate contact. There's all these pleasant feelings associated with this new relationship. But then over time, the relationship starts to dissolve, that you notice that you guys are kind of frustrated and agitated with each other. And over time, you might end this relationship. And now you're angry or frustrated or bitter or harsh towards this person. This is the mind experiencing craving, desire, attachment. That when you were together, you were getting what you wanted, which was this affection and this relationship. But now, when the relationship is over, the mind is experiencing this bitterness or anger or frustration. And this is being caused by the mind craving permanence, wanting this relationship to be permanent, where in reality, this relationship was always impermanent. This is the universal truth of impermanence. So if you've ever been together in a relationship with a boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, that's what you might have experienced as you were going through the relationship. It wasn't actually love that was causing those discontent feelings to arise. It was craving, desire, attachment. If you've ever been in a situation where someone close to you has died, maybe grandma and grandpa or mom or dad or brothers or sisters or friends, if you grieved at the time of the funeral, if you were sad, it wasn't the love that was actually causing that. This was the craving, desire, attachment, wanting grandma or grandpa to be permanent. The mind's craving, it's longing, it's yearning. As long as grandma and grandpa are alive, then the mind is getting these happy feelings. But when these people are dying, the unenlightened mind doesn't understand the universal truth of impermanence, in that these beings are impermanent. It's holding on to these beings, wanting them to be permanent. So now when you experience this impermanence, the unenlightened mind doesn't like that. One of the ways to say that the mind craves permanence is to say that the unenlightened mind does not like impermanence. It doesn't like change when things are changing. So grandma, grandpa, brothers and sisters, mom, dad, friends that are going from being alive to passing away, this represents impermanence to the unenlightened mind, and it doesn't understand it. And it's holding on to this being, wanting them to be permanent. So the love isn't what's causing this. When you understand what true love is here in a moment, you understand that it's not love that's causing those painful feelings. You're not a bad person. You haven't done anything wrong if you grieved or you felt sad at the time of a funeral. It's just that the mind is craving. It's holding on. It's having attachment. It's clinging to this individual. You might have noticed the same thing if you went to a wedding. Either you or the people around you might have been sad and crying at a wedding because this individual is going off into the world with another partner. And now this represents impermanence. Being at this ceremony, an individual is confronted with this relationship is not permanent. They're going off into the world with someone else. So now mom or dad or brothers or sisters or other people might be crying at a wedding because they're holding on in this situation, wanting this being to be permanent. And the same thing can happen when you send your kids away to college, or if your parents ever sent you away to college. They might have grieved at that time because the mind's holding on, wanting this relationship to be permanent, and now going away to college or university, the individuals might have struggled with that and experienced sadness or grief. Again, it's not love that's causing that. Oftentimes, the craving, desire, attachment that is causing these painful feelings is being misunderstood as love. this attachment, this longing, this yearning, this holding on, this clinging is being misunderstood as love. Because in these situations where your mind is attached, or you're having this certain craving or desire for this individual to be permanent, you also love that person perhaps. You might have love in there, but you have craving, desire, attachment in there as well. And now the mind in the unenlightened state, with its lack of wisdom, is associating those painful feelings that you're experiencing in these situations of death or breakup of a relationship or a wedding or someone going off to university or college. You might be associating those painful feelings as because you love them and you think that that's the reason why they're occurring. But it's actually occurring because of the craving, desire, attachment. And the more that you can see this to be true, that craving, desire, attachment is what causes all discontent feelings, then knowing the problem, you can actually start implementing the solution. So part of the solution to eliminating these discontent feelings from the mind is to understand the problem and the cause of that problem. So you can independently verify this second noble truth, that your mind is causing its own discontent feelings based in craving, desire, attachment, by looking at a recent time when you've been angry or sad or frustrated or irritated. And you can see through applying this understanding that in that situation, while you might have been blaming other people for what you were experiencing, if you look at that same situation with these fresh eyes, with this new wisdom, you can see in that situation where you were angry or you were agitated or you were annoyed, your mind was craving something. You were longing and yearning. You wanted something, and the mind wasn't getting what it wanted. And as long as the mind was having this craving, desire, attachment, it's going to experience this discontentedness. So you don't believe this second noble truth. You learn it, you reflect on it to start independently verifying it through your direct experience, starting to observe and notice that your mind is causing these discontent feelings. And then you start practicing, where you start looking inward and trying to discover, whenever your mind is discontent, what are the cravings, desires, attachments, rather than looking around to blame other people. Because with a misunderstanding of what's causing these painful feelings, not only does the unenlightened mind tend to blame other people for the feelings that it's experiencing, but you might tend to push people away out of your life or push a certain situation out of your life. This is called aversion. You might be bitter and harsh and hostile towards somebody because you have these painful feelings and you think that this person is causing them. So you might be bitter and harsh and hostile to them. Or you might put your expectations on somebody, trying to control them, to get them to do things your way. That's the mind trying to get its cravings fulfilled. So as long as you're pushing people away, being bitter and harsh and hostile, and putting your expectations on people, you're not going to be able to live harmoniously with all beings. You'll continue to struggle in the world. The number of people that you can spend time with become fewer and fewer and fewer and fewer. So when you practice in understanding this third noble truth, that the way to eliminate these painful feelings, all of the discontent feelings that are in the mind, whether it's conditional happiness, those pleasant feelings, that conditional painful feelings, or feelings that are neither painful nor pleasant, that you can eliminate these through eliminating your cravings, desires, attachments. And the path to enlightenment, the Eightfold Path, is the way to actually do that. So by you learning and practicing the entire path, you can eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments, and eliminate these discontent feelings. Now, in the unenlightened state, you experience conditional happiness, meaning if this condition is met, and this condition is met, and this condition is met, this condition is met, then you will be happy. And the more expectations, the more wants that you have, the less and less happiness that you're experiencing. But in the enlightened state, you have unconditional happiness or unconditioned joy, where the mind can just always be joyful. It doesn't experience these conditional feelings. So in the unenlightened state, if your bank account is this, and your mom does this, and your boss does this, and your life partner and your children and your friends do this, then you will be happy. And it's only when those conditions are met that you can be happy. But in the enlightened state, you don't have those cravings, desires, attachments. You slowly peel those away over consistent long-term training, that you train the mind gradually, slowly but surely, to eliminate these cravings, desires, attachments, so that you can eliminate the painful feelings. And part of getting to that point where you can eliminate these painful feelings is to understand true love, love without attachment. Because in your relationships where you have attachment, if you're actually practicing craving, desire, attachment, and you're thinking that this is love, then you won't be able to eliminate those painful feelings, and you'll find it challenging in relationships. You'll keep pushing people away, being bitter, harsh, and hostile, and putting your expectations on people. But when you can understand this problem through the Four Noble Truths, and then you can understand the solution is to eliminate the cravings, desires, attachments, now you can open your mind up to understanding what true love is, realizing that you've misunderstood what true love is. And the people around you might be practicing in such a way that they're not practicing true love. Because oftentimes individuals in your life, they may have true love in their mind, but then it's tainted and polluted with these cravings, desires, attachments, these expectations, people wanting something from you, expecting something from you. So when you choose to practice true love, understanding what it is, and you start practicing this more and more with the people around you, you will notice that you will experience more and more true love coming back to you. And when people are practicing true love, you'll be able to actually identify that they're practicing true love. Right now, if you don't understand what true love is, you might not be practicing it, and you might not be actually being able to identify it when other people are practicing true love. So this craving, desire, attachment, this longing and yearning, these wants and expectations are oftentimes masquerading as love. What we do in the unenlightened state when we don't understand true love is we might meet somebody, we might spend some time with them, and then we ultimately get to the point where we might say, I have fallen in love with you. I now love you. And then we go through a period of time of the relationship, experiencing different things. We might get angry, you might get frustrated, and then you get to a point where you might say, I have fallen out of love with you. I don't love you anymore. This isn't actually love. This is craving, desire, attachment masquerading as love. What the mind does when it misunderstands love is it might say, I love you, therefore I want you to be with me because you make me happy, and I want you to be with me. And then the reason why we're willing to say that is because this person is meeting certain expectations. There are certain things you want in your mind. And as long as they're meeting those expectations, this condition is met, this condition is met, this condition is met, this condition is met. Now you say, I have fallen in love with you. And now as time goes on, your expectations might grow and grow and grow of what you want from this person. And the other person's expectations might grow and grow and grow. And the relationship becomes more and more discontent. Your mind becomes discontent. The other person becomes discontent because your expectations aren't getting met and their expectations aren't getting met. And they just keep growing and growing and growing. And now the relationship's over and you might say that you've fallen out of love with this person. Or they might say that to you, that they've fallen out of love with you. Well, this isn't actually love, because when the mind is saying, I love you, therefore I want you to be with me, then these are the desires. This is the selfishness. This is the mind wanting and expecting something. Where when you can get to true love, you won't be experiencing that. You can love all beings unconditionally. There's no such thing as conditional love, but we might call this conditional love. What happens is when we meet somebody, if this condition is met and this condition is met and this condition is met and this condition is met, we might say that I love you. But that's conditional love, even though there's no such thing. That's craving, desire, attachment masquerading as love. The mind thinks that they've actually fallen in love with this person, but what's actually happened is they've fallen into craving, desire, attachment. So when you first meet somebody brand new, you might have all kinds of pleasant feelings. You might have a great experience when you first get together, because initially all you're interested in is meeting this person, getting to know them, maybe going out to dinner. You maybe spend some time talking and having conversations. You don't have any expectations. You're just interested in getting to know this person. For the first several weeks or maybe the first several months, everything in the relationship is going wonderful. It could not be better because you don't have really formed any expectations in your mind and they haven't really formed any expectations in their mind. So at the beginning of the relationship, it oftentimes goes really, really well because there's no expectations. Everybody's just getting to know each other. But then over time, you start having craving or attachment, or the other person starts having craving, desire, attachment, wanting certain things, expecting certain things out of this relationship, wanting something from the other person. And now as those expectations grow, they can't possibly be met permanently. you can't meet the other person's expectations, and the other person can't meet your expectations. So whether it's a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a husband, a wife, whether it's your parents, your siblings, your friends, your boss, whomever it is that you're in relationships with, they can't feasibly meet your expectations all the time, and you can't meet their expectations all the time. So at some point, this relationship experiences discontentedness, and that's where you might push people away, or they might push you away, because they're practicing this craving, desire, attachment. And now with people no longer meeting your expectations, or you're not meeting their expectations, you might get pushed away. This is aversion. Or you might experience the bitterness and hostility coming out of you or coming from other people. Or you might notice people are putting their expectations on you, or you're putting your expectations on them, wanting things to be done a certain way. You might think that, oh, I love my mom. I see my mom headed for some problem in life, and I want to rush in there and tell her what to do and how to do things. And the mind's trying to control things with your mom or your siblings or other people in your life, maybe your life partner. And as you rush in and try to control things and put your expectations on them, if they do things your way, you get happy. But if they don't do things your way, you get angry or sad or frustrated or other discontent feelings that are very painful. And now the relationship is really strained because people are pulling each other in opposite directions. So as long as craving, desire, attachment is masquerading as love, you might notice that you're doing these types of things in relationships. And as long as you're doing these types of things, other people are going to be doing these types of things too. So there's people like your parents, perhaps, that have true love. Like they love you unconditionally. No matter what you do in life, they love you. But that true love is being polluted with these cravings, desires, attachments. They're wanting you to do things a certain way. They're expecting you to do things a certain way. And they might be trying to put that on you. They might be trying to put these expectations on you, try to control you to do things their way. And if that's what you identify with as love, thinking that that's love, that might be what you're doing. That when you're in relationships with people, you might be putting your expectations on people. You're trying to kind of mimic this conduct that you're experiencing from your parents or your grandparents, your siblings. If this is the way you grew up, which most of us did, then you might be actually conforming to that. Your mind has kind of adopted that, thinking that that's love. And now you might be practicing that with other people. But today what we're going to be talking about is true love, so that you can understand what true love is, and now you can get more in touch with that and practice it, so that then you can experience more and more love coming back, and you can identify when people are practicing true love with you. So this craving, desire, attachment, this longing, this yearning, this wanting, this expecting something in a relationship, it's just coming from one's own selfish desires. That if you do this and you do this and you do this and you do this, I will love you. But if you stop doing what I want you to do, I don't love you anymore. This isn't actually love. This is the craving, desire, attachment. This is the expectations. This is the selfishness. So now I'm going to explain to you what true love is so that you can understand what that is. What true love is I love you, therefore I would like to see you be well. I have this genuine interest in seeing you be well. That you don't want anything or you don't expect anything from this relationship. You're not trying to control the person. You're not wanting them to be a certain way. You just love them as they are. You have care for this other person. You're not wanting anything specific in the relationship. You just would like to see that person be well and be peaceful. The relationship with true love is formed and conducted with no other intentions or interest other than to see that person succeed in life in whatever way they choose to progress forward in life. And part of them being successful in life is you not putting your expectations on them. As soon as you put your expectations on this person and try to control them, now they feel pressured and they don't like this relationship. They don't feel good in this relationship, and someone's going to try to get out of this relationship. Or they might try to start pressuring you to do things a certain way. So as long as you're putting your expectations on people and trying to control them, you're not going to be able to have healthy relationships. Sometimes people see like a parent or a life partner or a child that is potentially headed for some kind of problematic situation, and you know the wisdom of how to ensure that that thing doesn't happen. And because of your attachment to them, you feel painful feelings. if they experience painful feelings. So now you're not wanting them to experience painful feelings, so you might try to rush in and try to change things or tell them what to do or put expectations on them because you don't want this harmful thing to come to them. So you might try to put your expectations on this person or try to tell them what to do in their life. But that's going to just crowd the relationship. It's going to sabotage your relationship because the more expectations, the more cravings that you have, the more wants that you have, it's going to put more and more pressure on this person, and they're going to feel like they can't make their own decisions. So you're going to need to get to a point where, whether it's your parents, your life partner, your children, and other people, that you understand that part of them being well and being successful in life is to be able to make their own decisions. And then you make your own decisions. And each person is cultivating their own wisdom as they go forward in life. So let me give you a little bit of an example here so you can see how this sometimes works, and you might identify with this example and notice that this has occurred in your life too. If you ever had an interest to go to the movies, or maybe you really wanted to go to the movies, and there was this new movie coming out, and you went to your life partner or a friend or somebody else, and you said, hey, there's this new movie out, this Batman movie. I want you to go with me. Will you go to the movies? And they might have said, no, I'm going to stay home. And you're like, oh, come on. Like, go to the movies. It's going to be so fun. Like, you got to come on. And they're like, no, I'm going to stay home. You're like, you're no fun. You're a party pooper. Come on, you got to come to the movies. This is the mind trying to put your expectations on somebody, trying to control them to do things your way because you have a certain craving. You're wanting them to do something, and you're trying to kind of convince them and pressure them to come with you. As long as you do this, there's going to be someone who's discontent because they're going to be discontent that you're putting pressure on them, and eventually they might relent and they might actually come with you. But when they come with you, they're going to be grumpy. They're going to be irritable. But then if they stay home because of your craving, your desire, you're going to be grumpy if you decide to stay home too, or you decide to go to the movie. But the way to practice true love in this situation isn't to keep pressuring the person, trying to get them to do things your way. Instead, you might say, hey, would you like to go to the movies? There's this new Batman movie. It'd be wonderful to go see it together. And they're like, no, I'm going to stay home. Okay, great. Enjoy yourself. And then you go enjoy your movie, right? Whereas if your mind is attached to this person and you can only enjoy the movie if they come with you, this is a craving, desire, attachment. And now you might put your expectations on this person, trying to force them to come with you. And now both people become discontent at some point in this situation. So it's not just this type of thing, like something with a movie. It can be any number of decisions that an individual is looking to make, or you're looking to make, and you might really advocate and fight to death and try to get this person to agree with you. Because when the mind is having this craving, desire, attachment masquerading as love, the mind thinks that I can only be with this person if they do things the same way as me. So if you think that everybody needs to do the same things as you, and it's only when people agree with you and do things your way that you can love them or you can have a peaceful relationship with them, then you're not going to be able to have a peaceful relationship with anybody, because there's only one person in the world that you're ever going to agree with 100% of the time, and this is yourself. You're not going to agree with your mom, your dad, your brothers, your sisters, your life partners, your boss, your children. Everybody has had different experiences in life. This is impermanence. So therefore, because of our different experiences, we're going to make different decisions. That's impermanence. There's never going to be a time where you agree 100% with what somebody else is doing. So if you can only love somebody when they do things that you agree with, then you're not going to be able to love anybody except yourself, because you're not going to agree with everybody. So having true love is to learn how to love the person while maybe disagreeing with their decisions. You can disagree with a person's decisions while still loving the person, if you understand what true love is. So you can even get to the point where, let's just say something very serious happened. Let's just say a murderer murdered your mother. In this situation, if it happened right now, maybe you would hate that person. Maybe you'd be angry with that person. But that's only harming your own mind. It's not harming the other person. In this situation, if you understand what true love is, you can disagree with the actions. You can disagree with the decisions that this person made, and they're very unwise decisions. And you can disagree with those decisions. but you can still love the person. What love is a genuine interest in seeing this person be well. And sure, this murderer, they need to go to jail perhaps. Maybe they need to go to some rehabilitation and some counseling and some therapy and learn that it's very unwise to kill another person. But if you only can love somebody if they do things the way you want them to do it, then you can only love a very limited number of people in the world. And it's only a matter of time before this person does something that you disagree with, whether it's your children, your life partner, your parents, your siblings. It's only a matter of time before they do something you disagree with, and now you're in a very contentious relationship. So this example of a murderer murdering someone that's close to you, this might be hard for you to think of as loving that person. But loving somebody doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to go out to dinner with them, or you're going to go on vacation with them, or you're going to even sit down and have a conversation with them. Loving an individual means that you have a genuine interest in seeing them be well. And you're not interested in putting your expectations on that person to control them to do things any particular way. So if you can separate an individual's decisions from the person themselves, again, you can disagree with the decisions that somebody makes while still loving the person, having a genuine interest in seeing them be well. And this takes time. It takes training to be able to get to the point where you can do that. So by training with the Eightfold Path, which is what I've been teaching at different times in this program, which is the core central teaching, you're knocking down your cravings, desires, attachments, working to eliminate those. And at the same time, you're arising this loving kindness or this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well in the mind, so that now you can practice active goodwill with others around you, where you're not having these expectations and these wants towards others. So in relationships where you see yourself putting expectations on people, you would like to restrain your mind. You would like to pull that back, realizing that this is only going to cause complications in your life. So if people are being bitter and harsh and hostile with you, that's probably because you're being bitter and harsh and hostile too. If people are putting their expectations on you and trying to control you and tell you what to do, that's probably because you're doing those same things. So what you'll need to do is you'll need to clean up your practice. You're going to need to develop your life practice to be practicing more and more true love, so that in more and more situations, you can be practicing true love, so that the people around you can be practicing that true love as well. In situations where people are struggling or you see them headed for difficulties, you can offer them suggestions, you can offer them guidance, you can offer them advice, and they may or may not be willing to take that advice. They may say, yes, they're interested in hearing what you have to say. Or they may say, no, they're not interested in hearing what you have to say. And if you don't have a craving, desire, attachment, you can maintain your peacefulness and joy regardless. So there were situations as I was going through life where my mom would come to me and she would ask for advice. She would say, David, I'm encountering this particular thing. What do you think that I should do? Or what is your suggestion? And then I would share my advice with her. And I'd say, well, if you do it this way, this is what you'll experience. And if you do it that way, this is what you will experience. And she would listen to me and she would say, David, your advice is very good and, very accurate, but I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to do it my way. Okay, up to you, Mom. Do whatever you like. So she would go off and she would do things her way. And she would come back 6 months later and she would say, David, you're right. You gave me that advice. I didn't do it the way you suggested. And it turned out exactly the way you said. It turned out to be a big problem. I should have done it the way that you suggested, right? So part of learning and part of growing as a human being is going through those struggles and going through those difficulties and experiencing the mishaps and experiencing the mistakes. And that's how you cultivate wisdom. Whereas if I'm attached to my mom in that situation, I'm going to try to force and control her to do things a certain way. So in some situations, she was open to my advice and willing to listen, but she still would do exactly the opposite of what I suggested. In other situations, I would offer my advice and she's like, no, I'm not interested. Okay. That's what she's interested in doing, something else. She's not interested in hearing what I need to say, and you need to be hands off. And if you're not attached, then if they're struggling and they're experiencing painful feelings, you can understand that that's because of their own decisions. So part of loving somebody as they are and having this genuine interest in seeing them be well and be peaceful is to understand that them being well and them being peaceful is a result of their decisions. It's not a result of your decisions. So no matter what my mom was experiencing at different times in her life, if I tried to rush into her life and make a whole bunch of decisions for her, I can't solve her problems. I can't fix her life for her. She had to learn and develop wisdom and gain the ability to make decisions herself, because I'm not permanent in her life. Her life is a result of her decisions, not a result of my decisions. So if you try to rush into people's life, whether it's your parents or your life partner, your children or other people, and try to make a bunch of decisions for them, you're not actually serving them well, because you're not allowing them to cultivate wisdom. You would like to be there as a guide, as a support, offer your advice, and in some cases they'll take your advice and they're going to do what you say, and it might turn out very well. But in other situations, they might listen to your advice, do exactly the opposite, and it might turn out well, or it might turn out horrible. And that's the learning process. Or you might offer your advice and they say, no, I'm not interested in it. And they might implement something that turns out well, or they might implement something that doesn't turn out well. And that's part of the learning process. And you need to be there as a support, as an encouragement, and not make your love contingent upon whether they listen to you or not. Don't make your love contingent upon whether they do what you say. Don't make your love contingent on whether you agree with their decisions or not. Just love them as they are, and realize that they're a work in progress, just like you. They're cultivating wisdom. They're on the path, whether they're actively on the path to enlightenment, like you, or not. They're moving forward in life, and they're cultivating wisdom, and they're going to need to do that based on their own way of going forward. So cultivating this love and understanding this true love and practicing in such a way where you're not putting your expectations on people can create more space in the relationship where you're able to love them as they are. Because over here, with craving, desire, attachment masquerading as love, you'll crush the relationship. You'll sabotage it. Your cravings, desires, your wants, your expectations, you'll crush the relationship wanting things to be your way. But over here with true love, you can just support them. You can have them in your hand with an open palm, and you can just support them and love them as they are. And know that them being well and them being peaceful is a result of their decisions, not your decisions. And in order to get to this true love with other people, you're going to need to love yourself as well. In order for you to know how to practice true love with others, you're going to need to learn how to love this being who you are. So if you spend time alone and you feel bored, or you feel lonely, or you don't enjoy spending time alone, then you're maybe not loving yourself yet. You need to learn how to love this being who you are. So if you go to parks alone, if you go to the movies alone, if you go out to dinner alone, take yourself out on a date and love yourself. If you love yourself and you enjoy spending time alone, then other people will enjoy spending time with you. But if you don't enjoy spending time alone with yourself, then why would other people ever enjoy spending time with you? So you're going to need to learn how to love yourself, because sometimes what we have in our mind is we have this negative self-talk, this degrading, diminishing talk, where you might be judging yourself, looking down on yourself, and then diminishing yourself with this negative self-talk, this inner dialogue. And that is oftentimes coming from, that's what you do with other people. You might be looking at other people and judging them, and you might be putting yourself above them or below them, or considering them to be unwholesome or bad people. And now when you're judging people, putting yourself above them or below them, and you're having this negative self-talk towards them, and you're thinking of them in negative ways, now you direct that same pollution of mind towards yourself, thinking that you're no good, that you're judging yourself, and having this very negative internal dialogue where there's this inner conflict. So by practicing true love through developing the mind through these meditation techniques and the other tools that the Buddha shares with you, you can not only learn how to love other people and have true love for others, but you can learn how to have true love for yourself. And you can have this better relationship with yourself, which means that you might need to spend some time alone at different times, going out to restaurants, movies, going to the park, doing different things just alone. And this will gradually help you to cultivate the mind and develop the mind to the point where you can understand true love more and more. Because you might be starting to understand this intellectually in a class like this, but it's a whole nother thing to actually be practicing it in your relationships. So you're going to need to revisit this topic multiple times and then get better and better at practicing it. I'm going to pause here and see what questions you guys might have before I move on to talk about anything else related to true love. If you would like to ask questions, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions or follow-up questions directly. It looks like Francis has a question. If you'd like to ask your question, sir, you can go ahead.
Okay, greetings to you, to David. Okay, I have this question about, let me try to think of a way to say this thing right. I understand about, non-attachment, that I don't have expectation by other people, that is true love. But there are cases where, let's say, my wife, sometimes out of the doing some work that I may, let's say, disturb her time. Like yesterday, she wanted to do the mop the floor, and she uses a robot, the vacuum cleaner robot, and I didn't know that she hasn't finished yet. So I moved one of the chair away from the space, and she said, "Why are you doing like that? I haven't finished yet. Put it back." Sometimes she can be very harsh in her speech, but then yesterday I reacted to that. Okay, sorry, I didn't know that you didn't want. I thought you finished. So in this case, sometimes I make judgment, say that, oh, she doesn't understand about enlightened mind. We don't speak so harshly to another person. So I told myself that, oh, that could be a judgment already. I'm judging her for what she have done, and I'm also now trying to let go of that judgment and say, okay, that's the way she is. Maybe she's stressful from work and all that. She erupted and all that. And after a few minutes, it's okay already. So what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so judging someone would be to look down on them or look up to them and kind of trying to consider what's wholesome and unwholesome for other people. What you were coming to, it sounds like, is that you were just acknowledging that, okay, she doesn't understand the path to enlightenment and how we practice, so she's speaking a bit harsh. That can just be an understanding that you've come to. You're not looking down on her. You're not thinking badly of her. You just understand and recognize that, okay, this person doesn't understand the path to enlightenment in the natural law of karma, so they're choosing to speak harsh, but you're not thinking negatively of them because of that. That is what judgment would be, is if you're thinking negatively because of that. But just acknowledging and knowing that this person doesn't understand the path to enlightenment, that can just be an observation that you're making, not an actual judgment.
Okay, would it be wise if that another time when it's more favorable, can I just share with her and say that I'm not going to impose on the whole Dharma thing on her? Say that will be good if let's say we practice good speech, well-mannered speech and all that, in a way to lead her into thinking that maybe speaking harshly to another person may not be wise. So would it be beneficial for me to do that?
Yeah, the Buddha speaks about people who are close to you, that if you notice that they don't understand the Four Noble Truths and right view, and they don't understand some of these teachings, that it's wise to present that to them, and doing it in what I would describe as a humble way, where you can offer, you can suggest, you can provide advice and guidance, but ultimately if the person's not interested, then they're just not interested. So like in my life, I've seen different challenges that my sister has had in different situations in life, and I will usually offer her guidance, and she usually doesn't accept it. She's not interested in it, so I don't give it to her, right? So you can offer advice, you can offer guidance, you can offer suggestions, and if they say, no, I'm not interested, then you just need to move on. Because it would be your craving if you just constantly try to force and push and push. And think about your own life. If somebody tries to force or pressure you into doing something, the first thing you do is dig in the heels in the sand and push people away. You're not interested if people try to pressure you into something. So you can say at another time when their mind's calm, you can say, hey, would you be interested in understanding a bit about speech and how we could potentially communicate in better ways with each other? And if they say yes, okay, you share it with them politely and kindly. But if they say no, you need to just accept that and move on and not try to pressure them into understanding right speech.
Yeah, so in the end of the day, is that to to love them for who they are, without any expectation or judgment and all that. Yeah, okay, I got it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's loving them as they are, Francis, rather than loving them for who they are. Because loving them for who they are, it's still conditional love, that because they're this way, I will love them. So you would like to love people as they are. And then that doesn't mean that you can't suggest things or you can't guide them or you can't offer advice, because you can. But then you need to be willing to accept a no if they say no, they're not interested in your advice. And that's just loving someone as they are.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much for the distinction.
Yes, you're welcome. Looks like we have a couple other questions coming in here. On Facebook, Tonka's saying or asking, so loving kindness and loving would be the same. Yes, that's the reason why I taught the Brahma Viharas last week, the 4 healthy mental states: loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity, because those things are part of understanding how to practice true love. So now that you understand loving kindness, and now I'm explaining to you how to practice it in your relationships, where you're not putting your expectations on people and trying to control people. And in this way, you can have very healthy relationships with people. As soon as you see that your mind's trying to put your expectations on people, you need to restrain your mind and pull it back and not allow it to do that. Because if you put your expectations on others, then other people are going to put their expectations on you. I learned very early in life that you can't meet other people's expectations. It's just not possible. So like when I was growing up, my family had certain expectations of me, and I would work really hard to meet those expectations. And as soon as I got there, they would feel happy and I would feel happy, but then their expectations would change and they would want something different, and I'd have to work to get there. There was a period of time where I was spending a lot of time with my male friends, because I had a girlfriend when I was 16 years old who died and passed away. And I wasn't interested in having another girlfriend. So I was spending a good amount of time with my guy friends. So my family, observing this and noticing this, they said to me, David, why do you always spend so much time with your guy friends? Why don't you go get a girlfriend? And they kept telling me this over and over again. They kept expecting me to get a girlfriend. So eventually I went ahead and I got a girlfriend, and I started spending time with my girlfriend. Well, then after a while, they were like, why do you spend so much time with your girlfriend? Why don't you spend time with your guy friends? Right? So it was like you could never make them happy, because these are their expectations. These are their wants. These are their longing. You can meet somebody's expectation for a period of time, but then their expectations change. So not only are you working to eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments, wants, and expectations, but when other people are putting their cravings, desires, attachments, and expectations on you, you need to identify it as that's what they're doing, and then decide that you're not going to try to meet their expectations, that that's their expectations. There are times when I've even said to people, I'm never going to be able to meet your expectations. And they're like confused. Like, some people think in families that the goal is that they put their expectations on you, you put your expectations on them, and now everybody's meeting each other's expectations. But this isn't permanent. So getting to this loving kindness, or loving an individual as they are, or practicing true love, is to not put expectations on each other, and realize that when people are trying to put their expectations on you, the last thing you're interested in is trying to adopt their expectations as your expectations for yourself. Because as soon as you adopt somebody's expectations, what you're teaching them is, keep putting your expectations on me, and I'm going to keep accepting those, and I'm going to keep trying to work to do those, and they're going to just keep putting them on you over and over again. Instead, you need to just sometimes maybe say to people, I'm never going to meet your expectations. It's probably best for your own happiness if you just don't have expectations of me, and just love me as I am. That's one way you can approach it. Or you can say things like, Mom, I love you as you are. I don't want anything from you. I don't expect anything from you. I just love you as you are. And if you'd like to love me as I am, that would be wonderful, right? And we'd probably have a much better relationship that way. You can say little things like this, like you can sit down and have conversations like Francis was just asking about. But you can also kind of sprinkle some of these teachings into your conversation sometimes, where you start functioning in a way that is a more enlightened way. And now you kind of start sprinkling that in your conversations, and people start learning a bit about true love, or they start learning about a craving and attachments and expectations through the way that you interact with them. And this can kind of lightly help somebody to kind of awaken a little bit. They can't get to enlightenment by you sprinkling teachings into their life, but they can surely get to a little bit more peace, a little bit more joy in their life. And you can notice that your relationships can be a bit better and a bit more improved. So you might find in certain relationships, by sprinkling some of these things into your conversations, that it can help other people, and ultimately it will help you too, because they're not going to keep putting their expectations on you. So understanding these expectations is a really important part of learning how to practice loving kindness or true love, where you just love people as they are. Because if you keep putting your expectations on other people, then people are going to be putting their expectations on you. Depending on how you've grown up and what type of relationships you guys are in, you might have never actually been in a relationship where someone was practicing only true love. Of course, I'm sure there's people in your life that have true love, but their true love is tainted with these cravings, desires, attachments. So it's oftentimes the very first relationship you ever have with somebody where they're practicing true love is your Buddhist teacher. That I don't want anything from you. I don't expect anything from you. I love you as you are. You could go out tomorrow and murder somebody, which I don't advise you to do, but you could. And you could call me from jail and say, hey, David, will you come see me because I need your help and I'd like to get some advice? Or can I talk to you on the phone or email you because I need some guidance, I need some advice about the Buddhist teachings? I would still love you. I disagree with the decisions that you made to go out and murder somebody, but I still love you. I would like to see you be well. I have a genuine interest in seeing you be well. So this is what you would like to cultivate in your mind, that your mental quality of love that you're practicing, it's not contingent on this person doing anything specific, but you just love them as they are unconditionally. That's what true love is. There's a question here coming in on YouTube. It's not really related to our class, but something else. It looks like Joseph is asking about an appointment that you have with me tomorrow. If you've scheduled an appointment with me online, then the time that you're seeing online, it's based on your time zone. And the time zone that I'm going by, it shows it to me in my time zone. But I don't recognize your name that you're actually scheduled for an appointment with me. You may be. You can send me a private message and we can verify. Sometimes students think they scheduled an appointment and they just didn't hit the last button to actually submit it. So I don't recall that we have an appointment scheduled. So you can send me a private message either by email or personal message or something, and we can just verify that you actually have an appointment scheduled. And the time that you schedule is going to be based on your time zone. Okay, let's see if we have any other questions anywhere. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions anywhere. So let's talk about the next part of this topic of true love, which is love for parents and caregivers. In the teachings of the Buddha, he talks about having love for your parents and caregivers and other beings too. Oftentimes people think that you can't love and get to enlightenment, but that's because they're misunderstanding craving, desire, attachment as love. If you understand what true love is, the path to enlightenment is nothing but love and having love and kindness for other beings. You just need to learn how to do that. And one of the groups of individuals that the Buddha talks about and having this love and this gratitude and this appreciation toward is your parents and your caregivers. Because getting to the human realm and be able to have this opportunity to get to enlightenment, it's the absolute best thing that could ever happen for you. So your parents and your caregivers are the ones who allowed you to be able to get into this life. Like your mom carried you in her womb for 9 months perhaps, and your father did certain things, and your mother and maybe your grandparents. These people around you have done certain things to not only bring you into the world, but also to help you sustain your life. Because when all of us first came into the world, we couldn't sustain our own life. We needed people to feed us and bathe us and take care of us and do various things, where now at this point in our life, yeah, we can take care of ourselves and we can sustain our life. But early in our life, we weren't able to do that. So these parents and caregivers that we've had throughout our life, these are what's called our original teachers. They are the original people who started teaching us and guiding us and helping us learn how to sustain our life. And if it wasn't for those original teachers, you wouldn't have the opportunity to now learn the teachings of the Buddha, get to enlightenment, and experience the peace and joy of the enlightened mind and escape the whole cycle of rebirth. So the Buddha talks about this in his various teachings. And depending on what your experience has been in your life, you may have a very difficult relationship with your parents or caregivers. Oftentimes, this is because you and or them aren't understanding what true love is. You might have craving, desire, attachment in your mind masquerading as this love, and now you find it very difficult to have a healthy relationship with your parents. I don't think there's anyone in the world that agrees 100% with every single thing that their parents did growing up. That there are certain things that your parents did or said or certain decisions that they made that you disagree with. Well, if you disagree with those decisions based on your expectations of your parents, you might have a very contentious relationship with them. You might be struggling in terms of your relationship with them and other people. So I'm going to share this teaching with you from the Buddha, which is one of many that he shares related to parents and caregivers, helping you understand how you can kind of repay this debt of gratitude of them bringing you into the world, helping you to sustain your life, and now get to the point where you have this opportunity to attain enlightenment. These are the words of the Buddha. He shares here in this chapter titled, Repaying One's Mother and Father. Monks, there are two persons that cannot easily be repaid. What two? One's mother and father. Even if one should carry about one's mother on one shoulder and one's father on the other, and while doing so, should have a lifespan of 100 years, live for 100 years, and if one should attend to them by anointing them with balms, by massaging, bathing, and rubbing their limbs, and they even void their urine and excrement there, one still would not have done enough for one's parents, nor would one have repaid them. Even if one were to establish one's parents as the supreme lords and rulers over this great earth, abounding in the 7 treasures, one still would not have done enough for one's parents, nor would one have repaid them. So I'm going to pause here and then explain to you the rest of this in a moment. So what the Buddha is saying is if you have your mother on one shoulder and you have your father on the other shoulder and you carry them around for 100 years, you're massaging them, you're bathing them, you're rubbing their limbs, you're cleaning up their urine and their excrement, that you haven't done enough for your parents. If you establish them as the rulers of the entire world and you give them all these material possessions and wealth, you still haven't done enough for them. You haven't repaid them enough. Because all these things that you would be doing, those are all impermanent. That's not what the Buddha is saying would be a real help to these people. And here's the reason why. He says, for what reason? For what reason why you haven't repaid them, right? For what reason? Parents are of great help to their children. They bring them up, they feed them, and show them the world. So this is where the Buddha is essentially establishing that you have this debt of gratitude towards your parents. So again, you might not agree with everything that your parents have done growing up, but if you can love the person while disagreeing with the decisions, then you can get to a point where you can have this peace and this joy, where if your parents did things that you disagree with, that you can at least get to a point where you let that go. You no longer have those cravings, desires, expectations, and any anger, frustration, or resentment that you're holding in the mind, you can let that go because that's only harming you. Now, in some situations, certain caregivers might have done something very difficult. Maybe they've done sexual abuse or physical abuse or verbal abuse or something like this. And you might have decided that you're never going to have a relationship with this person ever. Okay, if that's what you're choosing to do, that's fine. You don't need to have a relationship with someone who's done that type of abuse to you. But at least if you can get to a point where you release this resentment or anger or bitterness in the mind, and you can at least just have appreciation that they brought you into the world and you were able to sustain your life to now be able to go forward in life, at least you can get to that point. So the Buddha is not saying that you need to run off and have this amazing relationship with your parents. He's just helping you, you'll see in a moment, explain that yes, there's the certain debt of gratitude that you have. And it's unwise for you to hold any kind of resentment towards these individuals, because I'm sure there's things that you disagree with that they did based on your cravings, desires, attachments, your wants, your expectations. But if you hold on to that resentment or anger, it's only harming you. So whether you choose to have a relationship with your parents or not is up to you, particularly if they've done some very harmful things in the past. But at least get to the point where you can eliminate any kind of anger, any kind of hostility, or any kind of bitterness that might be in the mind. And the Buddha here goes on and explains what you can actually do in order to repay this debt of gratitude toward your parents. He says, "But monks, if when one's parents lack confidence, one encourages, settles, and establishes them in confidence. If when one's parents are unwholesome, one encourages, settles, and establishes them in virtuous behavior or moral conduct. If when one's parents are selfish, one encourages, settles, and establishes them in generosity. If when one's parents are unwise, one encourages, settles, and establishes them in wisdom. In such a way, one has done enough for one's parents, repaid them, done more than enough for them." So what he's talking about here is helping your parents on the path to enlightenment. There's no aspect of the path to enlightenment is about you going out and trying to change other people, or you going out and trying to force other people to learn and practice these teachings. There's no part of the path to enlightenment that is like that. Everything that you're doing on the path to enlightenment is to improve the condition of your own mind. But what the Buddha is sharing here is that these people who brought you up and showed you the world, helped you to sustain your life, you could do all these material things for them and giving them all this riches and all these treasures and do all these miraculous things to bathe them and massage them and so forth. But if you're really interested in helping them and helping them to improve their life, that you can do these things, which is help to establish them in confidence. What he's talking about here is establishing him in confidence with his teachings and him being the perfectly enlightened one. Because when you learn and practice these teachings, more and more you're going to be able to independently verify that these teachings are true, and it's leading to more peace and more joy in your mind. And as you're experiencing more and more peace and joy in your mind, you're going to look around the world and the relationships around you, and you're going to see people are really struggling. People are having all kinds of difficulties and they're suffering. I don't use that word very often, but there's people that are really suffering in the world and not realizing that they have the full ability to improve the condition of their mind through learning, reflecting, and practicing. But if they don't have confidence in the Buddha and his teachings, then they're maybe not ever going to turn to the teachings that are going to ultimately help them. So you might be able to kind of settle and establish them in confidence in the Buddha. And one of the ways that I've done that is like when my sister's maybe struggling with a certain problem, I might say to her, you know, that problem that you're having, the Buddha has all the answers to that problem. He has teachings that will actually help you. Is that something you're interested in learning? Or I might just say, you know, the Buddha actually has some great advice on that issue that you're struggling with. And I might just leave it at that and to see if it perks her curiosity and see if she says, really? What does he share? Right? She doesn't ever really do that, but that's something that you can do in order to help establish somebody in confidence, is show them where maybe your parents or your siblings or your life partner comes to you and says, you know, I noticed you're so much more peaceful and so much joyful lately. You know, what are you doing? Oh, this is the teachings of the Buddha. They're really beneficial. Have you ever thought about exploring the teachings of the Buddha? You can ask questions like that, and that's going to help to establish them in confidence. Here the Buddha is saying that where you see that they're unwholesome, that you can establish them in virtuous behavior. So one of the examples I give here is like when I was growing up, I spent a lot of time with my grandparents. And my grandparents grew up in a very different time than I did. They were born in the 1920s and they were living in America. So they grew up at a time when one type of person would eat at one restaurant and another type of person would maybe have to go around the back of the door, and one type of person would drink out of one water fountain and another type of person would drink out of another water fountain. And they grew up seeing these kinds of things throughout their life, and their mind was conditioned to think that a person that has one color of skin is one way and a person who has another color of skin is another way. My grandfather fought in World War II and he was killing Japanese people during the war. So their perspective of people who were not of their same race and ethnicity was very different than mine. So sometimes when I would be driving in the car, maybe going to school or something, my grandmother would be taking me to college, and I would hear her kind of comment, or my grandfather would be commenting about different things about people of other races or ethnicities. And when I would hear that, I would kind of make suggestions to them, and I would share things with them that would maybe help change their perspective. And over a consistent long-term period, what I noticed is they did change their perspective, that they did start thinking about people in a different way, and they became more loving and more kind of all beings around them. So slowly but surely, as I saw their unwholesomeness, I gave them suggestions and thoughts and things to think about that was different than what they were exposed to when they were growing up. So this is the kind of things that you can do with the people that are close to you. If you notice that your caregivers or your parents are selfish, holding on to things very tightly, then the Buddha teaches to establish them and kind of encourage them to practice generosity. Because practicing generosity is what's going to help them eliminate craving, desire, attachment. That's what's going to help them to reduce their discontentedness. Because if you're eliminating cravings, desires, attachments in the mind, then the mind can become more peaceful and more joyful. So where you notice the people around you, particularly your caregivers, being very selfish, you might encourage them to practice some generosity. And you can do that in very loving and kind ways without putting your expectations on people. And then lastly, the Buddha talks about this wisdom, that where you see them being unwise, that you can then establish them in wisdom, where you see that they could have some wisdom that would help them. You could do like I was suggesting, where you can say, Mom, are you interested in my advice? Or sister, are you interested in my thoughts on this topic? Sometimes they're going to say yes, sometimes they're going to say no. This is a way for you to help the individuals around you. So this is something that the Buddha teaches, and it's very helpful as you are interacting with your parents, because this is a wonderful way to repay them. But you're going to need to find very humble ways to do this. When we were doing this with my wife's mother, my mother-in-law, oftentimes she would sit on the sofa and we would sit down on the floor and we would talk to her, and we would try to be very humble, because oftentimes a parent sees it that they're above us and that they're not used to learning from their children. So by us sitting on the floor and her sitting on the sofa, she would be more open to us talking to her and providing her thoughts and guidance on various things in her life. And then ultimately people decide to do whatever they would like to do. So as you're offering advice and you're offering guidance, do it in ways of like, you may consider this, or Mom, I suggest you think about this, or have you thought about it in this way, right? Instead of like trying to force or control them to do any particular thing. And then as you're choosing life partners, or if you have a life partner, or maybe you're younger and you don't have a life partner, if you're interested in getting a life partner, which not everybody's going to have a life partner. There's going to be some people who decide to be single. Not everybody needs to have a life partner. But if you decide to have a life partner in life, it's really wise to have a life partner that is learning and practicing these similar teachings. Because if you're learning about true love and you're learning about non-attachment and they're not, you're going to be becoming more and more peaceful and more joyful, and they're going to be struggling in this darkness and in this discontentedness. And there might be times where you're learning about true love, and maybe they go on holiday or they go on business trip or something, and you're at home, and they might call you and say, hey, honey, did you miss me? And you might say, no, I didn't miss you, right? And they might associate that you don't love them, because people oftentimes think that if you're lonely or you're missing them, this is because you love them. But it's not actually the love that's causing that loneliness or you to miss people. This is your craving, desire, attachment, wanting them to be permanent. And now you can only be happy when they're at home with you. When they're away on a business trip, you miss them or you feel lonely. This is the craving, desire, attachment. It's not the love. So if you're in a partnership with a life partner and they go away on a business trip and they say, hey, honey, did you miss me? And you're like, no, I didn't miss you. And people are like, what? You don't love me? So if you have a partner that is willing to do this inner work and willing to understand that there's things for them to learn and that they need to develop their mind and understand true love, this way, as you're learning and practicing true love, they can be learning and practicing true love. You guys aren't putting your expectations on each other, and you can develop a really healthy and wholesome relationship where it can be very satisfying and very fulfilling. But if you're in a relationship where you're learning and they're not, you're going to be really struggling throughout your life. In this position of having a life partner in your life, it's a very key position in your life. If you were the owner of a company, for example, and you were trying to hire a CEO or a COO for your company, that's a very impactful hire. You're going to take your time and make sure you hire the right person, because if you hire someone who is the wrong person, your entire company could collapse because you've put the wrong person in that position. And it's the same thing about a life partner, that this is a person who's like the CEO or the COO in your life, and decisions that they make are going to be directly affecting you, but it's your decision to be their life partner and select them as the life partner that's affecting you. So you would like to really take your time and make sure that whoever you select to be your life partner, if that's what you're choosing to do, is somebody who's interested in doing this inner work, in developing their mind and understanding more and more teachings such as true love, so that you're practicing true love and they're practicing true love, and now together you guys can work this out. Oftentimes when we're looking for a life partner, we might think of Prince Charming or Princess Charming, and you might meet somebody and you might cast all your dreams and all your aspirations onto this person. And you might think that, okay, I have this boyfriend or I have this girlfriend, they're going to complete me. They're going to make me feel whole. But in reality, after you spend time with this person for 3 months or 6 months or a year, you might realize that they're struggling in life just like you. Whereas if you put all your dreams and hopes and aspirations on this person thinking that they're Prince Charming or Princess Charming, you're going to be left feeling very lonely or having these painful feelings later when you realize that all your dreams and hopes and aspirations aren't being fulfilled by this person, because it's utterly impossible for a person to fulfill all your dreams and hopes and aspirations. The only way for you to get to peacefulness and joy is to train your mind. Through eliminating the pollutions of mind, you can get to that peace and joy. It's not this person that is going to produce the peace and joy in your mind. If you're looking for that, then you're just setting yourself up to be experiencing painful feelings at some point. You're sabotaging your relationship. So it's not meet a partner, marry, and then live happily ever after. That's not the way any of this works. The way this works is you meet somebody, you learn that person, you get to know them, you have conversations with them, you learn to do problem solving together, you learn to spend time together and enjoy your time together, you learn to face challenges and difficulties together, developing communication with each other. And then over time, as you guys are growing as individuals, yeah, you can live happily ever after, but there's a lot of work to getting together with a life partner and learning this person, developing your relationship, developing the ability to communicate and solve challenges together. So that's what you're really looking for, is you're looking for someone who's committed enough to you that the first challenge, the first difficulty that you experience, they're not going to be out the door. Right? You would like somebody that's committed, that as you meet various challenges and difficulties in life, they're willing to work through those with you, because you're a work in progress and they're a work in progress. And now if you guys are both maintaining the responsibility to do your work individually, you can support each other and encourage each other without expectations, but you can support and encourage each other, but always remember that you're doing the work. In your life, you're doing your own work and they're doing their own work, and now you guys are walking forward in life. Yes, together, but it's your own independent practice. You're not going to be able to meet somebody where you guys come together and now all your decisions are exactly the same. Sometimes people think that when they meet a life partner, that now that we're together, we have to agree on every decision. In every single decision, we have to agree, and we're going to agree. And if we don't agree on every decision, then our relationship is no good. But if you understand the universal truth of impermanence, you know that this isn't possible. It's not possible for you to meet somebody and now agree with every single decision that they make. So when you're in a partnership with somebody as a life partner, you guys are going to agree on certain decisions, but then there's going to be certain decisions you disagree on, and that's okay. And you might come together and you might have conversations, and at the end of that conversation, you might choose to agree with them, or they might choose to agree with you. Or at the end of that conversation, you guys might still both disagree, and they choose to do things one way and you choose to do things another way. And that's completely okay. But if you fight with your cravings, desires, attachments, your expectations, your wants, and you're trying to force this person to agree with you, it's going to put strain on your relationship. So know that whether it's a life partner relationship or some other relationship, you're going to disagree with what people do in their relationships and what they do in their life. And that's okay. you can still love the person as they are while disagreeing with their decisions and not putting your expectations on another person, but just being there to support them, encourage them, and help them along as they're open to your advice and as they're open to your suggestions. So this is everything that I have to share with you guys on this topic. I'll open up to any and all questions that you guys might be interested to ask about anything that we've been talking about today or anything else that you'd like to discuss. You can put this into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any questions or follow-up questions directly. It looks like Tonkas has a question here in Facebook. Why would my romantic relationships be so much harder than relationships with parents, children, and friends? So the mind can acquire wisdom about certain things and function in those experiences very well and with ease. But then there's other situations where you haven't yet cultivated the wisdom yet, and now the mind isn't able to make decisions wisely in those situations. So I'm sure in your relationship with your parents, your children, and your friends, there's some level of discontentedness you have perhaps in some of those relationships, unless you've extinguished all your cravings in those relationships, but you might have some agitation or some annoyance there. But in your romantic relationships, maybe you guys are being intimate together, and now with this sexual contact, there tends to be a lot more craving, a lot more desire, a lot more longing, a lot more wanting and expectations. So when the relationship has sexual aspect to it, there's more craving and more desire there. So there's more opportunity for the mind to become discontent, because it's not just sex that the mind has craving, desire, attachment for. That boils over into other parts of your life. So you might notice that that's the reason why you're having challenges in those relationships. You might have cultivated a certain amount of wisdom in your parents, children, and friends, and you're not having a sexual relationship, so there's less craving there, there's less attachment. Where in your romantic relationships, you haven't cultivated the wisdom yet of how to practice non-attachment, and there may be sexual contact there that is now producing all this craving and attachment, and now that's boiling over into other parts of your relationship, and now you're experiencing discontentedness there. So you can cultivate wisdom to be in a relationship with a life partner, and it can be completely peaceful and completely joyful. My wife and I have been together for 16 years. For 11 years of that, we were discontent at different times. We would argue, we would struggle, we would have difficulties. But over time, we were gradually working towards improvement in our relationship, and that included working on our own mind. So by the time we got to our 11th year, everything's been peaceful, right? Like, we've been married for 16 years, but we've been happily married for 5 years, right? This is where you can understand that. So that's why when you get together with a life partner, it's not get together and live happily ever after. It's get together, learn each other, develop relationship, develop conversation, develop problem solving skills, and all these other things that you need on the path. And then together, you're getting to a point where you're both can be peaceful and joyful in this relationship, not wanting anything from each other, and being able to speak with each other in endearing ways, in loving and kind and respectful ways. Because when your cravings aren't getting fulfilled in a romantic relationship, you might become bitter and harsh and hostile with this person. And now it's causing you difficulties in a relationship. So the more you get rid of craving, desire, attachment, you'll be able to function in all your relationships more peacefully and more joyfully. You'll have long-lasting, fulfilling, and satisfying relationships. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions anywhere. So what I'll do then is just thank you all for joining for today's class and invite you to our future classes, because next Sunday I'm going to be in chapter 16 of this book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. And it's very helpful if you guys are reading this, because there's certain things that I share in class that aren't in the book, and there's certain things in the book that aren't in the class. So if you're reading the book and attending the class, you're going to be getting more benefit out of this program. Because next week in chapter 16, I'm going to be sharing with you that chapter, which is titled Dissolving the Ego. Ego serves no purpose. This is where I'm going to help you understand what the ego is, the problems that it's causing you in life, and how to eliminate it, how to dissolve it. And this is an important part of the path to enlightenment, is to eliminate the ego and dissolve the ego. So you're going to need to learn how to do this. So if you're reading this book, before class and or after class. It's up to you. Everybody learns a bit different. You can choose for yourself, but I definitely encourage you to be reading the book. And you can get access to this by downloading it for free from our website, which is buddhadailywisdom.com. You can take it and go print it if you like, or you can get printed copies on Amazon or here at the temple in Chiang Mai. So having this book will be very important for you in the program. So next week is going to be chapter 16. Then on Wednesday, I'm going to be doing loving kindness meditation, where I'm going to guide you guys in that loving kindness meditation session, and then open up to any and all questions that you have related to any aspect of the path to enlightenment. Loving kindness meditation is the tool or the technique that you're going to need in order to cultivate this true love in the mind. You can practice other things that I'm teaching you on the path, which is part of that eightfold path. But without loving kindness meditation, you wouldn't actually be able to get to the point where you're practicing true love. So that's why on Wednesday, we're going to be doing that together. And I taught a 4-part series on this at the very beginning of the group learning program that you can go back and watch if you like, because it's recorded on podcasts and it's even in our Facebook and YouTube channels as well. So you can get access to all of that. So thank you all for joining for today's class. Perhaps we'll see you guys in one of these future classes. Have a very wonderful and lovely rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Sawadee ka.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To provide support for this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha. To access more teachings, visit buddhadailywisdom.com. There, you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Remember to establish a daily, consistent meditation practice, along with learning and practicing these teachings. A well-developed meditation practice is the foundation in which to train the mind to attain enlightenment.